Hello, 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 and welcome to the College of Creation. My name is Dan.
And my name is Michael.
And we are Dungeons & Dragons DMs who love to homebrew items, spells, creatures, and features for D&D. And we are back again to talk about Compendium Part 2. The first 10 of our creations from the first 10 episodes of this show. We're going back over them. We've already been through 1 through 5. You can go back and listen to that episode, but now we are tackling and going back and making some edits, making some changes to creations 6 through 10. Michael, how are you? How was the experience of, retreading your old footsteps?
I feel great this week. I think I had less to overhaul this week. I suppose that is the way it should be. The first ones are always going to be the rockiest. So we had some pretty severe edits 1 through 5.
Yep.
And I had less of that. I encountered less of that this time. But I did smooth some things over. I created a few new things to go with some of my creations. And I think I made a lot of it more clear and concise. So it was a good week.
Yeah, I mostly agree. I will say, when we get into it, I will have a couple of pretty major overhauls. Although really, I'm looking at it again, and there's really just the one really big overhaul that I did this time around. Mm-hmm. I made a bunch of little changes. I made a couple of, no change at all, just wording, just to clarify and just,
Yes,
clean things up, which, it cannot be overstated, is a really important part of this work, right?
Absolutely.
The number of times that we have brought something and in the process of reading it through to you, I have realized that something does not make sense the way that I've worded it.
Doesn't make sense.
Or is spelled wildly incorrectly. These things are riddled with typos.
Yeah. Not anymore.
So going through with just the fine-tooth comb certainly does not ever hurt.
Absolutely. Yeah. The devil is in the details sometimes, especially, we've talked about this so many times before, but anything that anyone is brave enough to put out onto the internet, especially the hellscape that is Reddit, more power to you. If you are a person that creates something and puts it out on the internet, there will be someone that finds the smallest, most insignificant detail that is incorrect. A misspelling, a punctuation error, something.
Yeah.
And that can be really important. That stuff can really sink in addition to a publication or something. So yeah, it is so important.
Incredibly. But yeah, I agree. I think I had a little bit less to overhaul this time around, which actually gave me the freedom to take, I think, more time to optimize rather than having to rethink from the jump, right? So that's definitely something I went into, but yeah, it was fun to dip back in, remember some of these features as well.
Yeah, actually, there is something that I want to talk to you about.
Oh yeah,
that has been very fun over the past couple of weeks.
Indeed,
that we have from both sides of the table now encountered, which is play-by-post Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes,
you joined a game of mine, and then I joined a game of yours.
Yeah.
And we have been playing back and forth with several other people at these tables, and it has been a fine time.
Yeah.
One of the few things that I think that I can say I have been doing longer than you.
Yeah.
Because you've been DMing and playing overall much longer than I have. But play-by-post was new to you.
Yeah, totally new.
At my game.
Yeah, I mean, I will say I've done, it's not exactly play-by-post, or it's not structured in the same way, but I have done things with regard to, character development with players at tables that I've been at. The primary sessions are on, on voice chat or video chat or in person, but, maybe we have a side chat in a Discord where, folks can talk in character to each other, or I can talk through a scene with somebody from backstory to kind of develop what was this relationship like? So I've done some of that, but getting into the actual structured, we're going to play the game exclusively through text, going back and forth, and it's so cool. It's very, very cool, and I actually love it a lot.
I do too.
You know what's the craziest thing for me? Because you brought this in to me as a way to start to maybe playtest some of the things we've been making here, or some of the things you yourself have made and want to involve at your table. Mm-hmm. I definitely thought, oh, well, that's fine. I'll make a character who's kind of fun, and I'll sort of, I'll figure out who they are. But, I'm not going to be too married to any specific idea, because, I'm just going to play out this sort of shorter campaign for just for the playtesting part of it.
Sure.
But then, horrible things happened to my character based on the situation that you put us all in. And I rolled a natural one at the worst possible time.
Oof. Yeah.
And we had to go through this whole thing. And, I was at dinner with my wife and got a couple of messages regarding sort of the fallout of that roll. And, I started to, kind of have to take a moment and was getting a little choked up, just based on the reading and the thinking about what would be going through that character's mind at that time. It's one of those things where I think at this point I recognize how easy it is for me to get into that in an actual session, in a video chat session or anything like that. So easy for me to get invested to that degree. And I guess I wasn't expecting to be able to get that same level of investment out of the text-based. But I did. It was a wonderful surprise.
One of the things that I have found is I think I have been a part of 6 or 7 play-by-post games now through various groups. And the one constant that I think rings true in any game, whether I am running it or participating in it, is the wild disparity between the amount of in-game time and out-of-game time, and how that is contrasted to a live session. Mm-hmm. Because it's kind of always going, right? It's always in the back of your head. Yeah. You can send a message or receive a message at any time. And there are some days when very little happens, 1 or 2 things may occur, and that game time is 2 seconds in an entire 24-hour period. And then the next day, an entire day worth of activity can go by in an hour. So it's so much different. It's such a high level of fluctuation as opposed to a live session, that you end up spending more time communicating with the other players. And that's the type of thing that I think really establishes a party bond. Yeah. It takes a little bit longer with a live session than it does with play-by-post. And even though we went into it with the mindset of, this is just going to test out some of our things, we're going to do it surprised me too. Yeah. How invested all of us became once we really got into the thick of this final chapter, the 11th hour of the game. Yeah. Is really, in a live session, it would last maybe 4 hours, maybe less than that. Yeah. And it's been multiple weeks now, and you don't quite get that level of camaraderie, especially with strangers in a few hours. Yeah,
it's so interesting, and I think you're absolutely right that maybe it's not the amount of time in aggregate, but it's definitely the spread out nature of communications and of going back and forth that does feel more true to life, and it feels more, in some ways, more immersive with regard to those one-on-one interactions and those party dynamics, because you always have the opportunity to reach out, hey, and we're in the thing and we're talking outside of game, but also in character in the chat or Discord or whatever, in a way that feels truer to the way that the party would be interacting, just talking or taking their time through these interactions, especially when we're kind of in downtime area. But the other thing that I've thought is really interesting, and especially with this group that I have started to run for, right now at least, we're about a week in, and we're also at about the point where I would expect the first session to kind of be like wrapping up to its conclusion if this was to be like a 3 to 4 hour session. You know, it would have been some
Right.
character introductions and then some, here's some plot hook stuff, get you all together, and then get you to sort of the first, like, here's a big moment. Cool. That all happened in the space of a week. And if you think about it, on the scale of like, if you're playing D&D once a week for a 3 to 4 hour session, it actually doesn't take longer to do play-by-post.
No, not at all.
It's spread out more. But like time-wise and the amount of time it takes to get probably through the same story, the same adventure module, whatever you're doing, is probably going to be about the same. Because you're spreading all that time out over an entire week instead of just 3 hours shoved into that week. I don't know. I'm having a lot of thoughts about it, and not all of them have calcified into anything useful or interesting yet, but I do think it's a super fun way to play that I had not really messed around with at all before.
I'm so glad that you like it. It's been an emerging love of mine. I was very skeptical at first. I had reservations. I said, I'm going to try this, and I'm not going to like it, and I'll just respectfully drop out after a little bit, because I really can't envision myself playing any way other than, player facing. And the flexibility of scheduling is gone.
Oh my goodness.
Like, you don't have to worry about that. There's no pressure as a DM to end a session on a big note. You don't have to build up to anything. I mean, there have been so many times where I get to the point where it's like 30 minutes left in a live session, and I'm like, nothing exciting has happened.
Right.
I feel like I have to end on a cliffhanger or a big moment, or the needle drop of like rolling initiative, and then we end the session or something like that, and that pressure is gone.
Yeah.
It's a really nice free way to play.
Yeah. And I also, I love being able to take my time when describing things, right? To be able to get my words in order, because I'm a DM who loves to describe things in detail and like flavor them in a way that's, really immersive and interesting and unique. And like, so I like to make sure my words are correct when I do that, instead of, just always going back to the same phrases over and over again, with the time to be able to say like, how do I want to say this? I have time to go and look at a thesaurus.
Right.
I have time to like, adjust the wording so that it's exactly the way that I want it to be. And it doesn't interrupt the flow of everything, because, the flow is a lot easier, a lot slower. I love it. It's great. I'm having a lot of fun with it.
I'd also be remiss if I didn't shout out the search bar.
Yeah.
The search bar in play-by-post, best tool ever.
Yo, huge.
I never forget an NPC's name. I never forget a location's name. I never forget the wording that I used when describing a place or thing. It's just wonderful. It's this whole itemized, documented piece of storytelling.
Your notes are right in there with the rest of the story. It's all the same thing. It's great. Ooh, well, anyway, I thank you very much for introducing me to it. I think it's a great time, and I'm having a lot of fun with it.
Thank you for playing.
Absolutely.
Me too. It's only taken us 7 months at this point to play a game together, and I didn't think it would be play-by-post, but I'm glad that it was.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's dive right into it.
Let's hit it.
Do you want to kick us off with One Horn, Two Boots? Our episode 6 prompt was a series of items based on movement speed, using movement speed as some sort of vehicle for this item to work.
Yeah. What I made was the Tactician's Horn, which was a horn that you could blow to give some of your movement to some of your allies. The Dancer's Boots, which would allow you to expend some movement to try and confuse and confound your enemies. And the Steadfast Boots, which were boots you could slam into the ground and keep yourself stable for however long you wish. I mostly kept these entirely the same, except I changed a couple of little pieces of the wording. Just to say, with the Tactician's Horn, when you expend any amount of your movement speed in 5-foot increments on your turn. You can grant another creature that can hear you within 120 feet of you 5 feet of movement that it can either use immediately as a reaction or on its next turn. So I added that little thing about it being able to use it right then in that moment, just because I feel like that adds the versatility that pushes it to a rare level item.
Yeah.
I think I probably could have pushed it down to an uncommon had it just been the next turn they can use it. But I like the idea that, especially as a tactician, you can use it right now if that would be beneficial, but also you can save it. Let them choose how best to tactically use that next time on their turn, and say if they don't have a reaction available or if they don't want to use their reaction for that, you don't lose the benefit of having used the horn. The dancer's boots are identical to what they were. You carry out a bewildering series of dance steps by expending 10 feet of movement to try and charm all creatures within 15 feet of you. That's it. Those are probably uncommon. I left them as rare for now. I don't know. They don't really have charges, so
I'm not sure.
Hard to know. And then the steadfast boots I changed somewhat significantly. The effects are the same. So when they're active, you're immune to all effects that would push or pull you, and effects that would teleport you or send you to another plane of existence against your will. And you gain a +5 bonus to all athletics checks and strength saving throws. The only thing that I changed was that instead, at the beginning of your turn, you can choose not to move and reduce your speed to 0 until the start of your next turn.
That's a good switch.
Previously, you had to expend a free action to activate them, or was it a bonus action? I don't remember now what it was, but it was you had to like expend some sort of effort to dig the spikes into the ground, and then you also had to use a bonus action to pull yourself out. So with this, you're limiting yourself in the same way that like a Tabaxi limits the bonus movement, right? Which is like, cool, you can use this thing, but you can't use it again until you don't move on your turn. It's sort of the reverse of that. Like, if you move on your turn, you can't use this at all. Mm-hmm. But if you decide to stay where you are, stay put, you're good. Dig yourself in, but then the next time you choose to move, you can't, use it again at the end of your turn. It's just a slightly different way of working it, and I think it also just clarifies some of the action economy so that it's not so many different things to have to remember. That's the biggest changes for me. Nothing else really crazy.
I think those are great changes.
How about you?
I made 2 additional movement-based items in the same vein as one of them that I already had. The first item that I made originally was the Kinetic Stepmaster. To briefly explain what this item does, it's like a stair stepper that you can sink movement speed into. You can bank feet into it, and at different thresholds of feet that have been banked into this Stepmaster, you can emit a dome of protection. Before, I had any creature within the dome can reduce damage by 5, damage taken by 5. That's not very, it wasn't very clear in what that meant. Mm-hmm. I changed that to any creature of your choice, so it no longer covers all creatures, enemies, and things like that. They can subtract your con modifier instead of just a flat 5 from any weapon or spell attack. So it has to be a weapon or spell attack, and it subtracts your con modifier instead of that.
Yeah, I like it.
And that's all I did for that one. A small change. The cube of maddening fatigue is exactly the same. I really enjoy the chaotic nature of that. Left it totally identical.
I enjoy that one a lot. Again, I'm going to put it in a dungeon somewhere. I just haven't decided where. Yeah. It's so good.
It has to be. It has to be eventually.
It's so good.
The third item that I had originally, it was the Power Kicker Boots. I took out the stipulation for barbarians, fighters, monks, rangers, or rogues. That just seemed like an unnecessary mouthful. Mm-hmm. I changed it to just requiring flat attunement.
Great.
And I made 2 other types of footwear that are akin to this. It's very similar to the Power Kicker Boots.
Okay.
I made skill sneakers. Essentially are the Power Kicker Boots, but for skill checks. So this sleek pair of athletic shoes lined with dozens of metal discs These shoes have 5 charges and regain 1d4 plus charges each day at dawn. You can expend a charge to run in place up to your available movement. For every 10 feet of movement spent running in place, you can add a +1 bonus to your next skill check.
Gotcha.
It's the same as the power kickers, not for attacks, but for skill checks. And then the medicinal slides is the same, but for healing. So you can expend 1 charge to run in place up to your available movement. For every 10 feet of movement spent running in place, your sandals will pump a small dose of healing potion into you, restoring 1d4 hit points. So it's just a small available shot of health.
Is there any benefit if you wear them with socks?
I think that might actually impede them because they
actually, yeah.
plug right into your legs. So that
no
was the
socks
thing
and sandals here,
No
folks. No socks and sandals.
You can wear them with socks. Disadvantage on all charisma checks at that point.
Nice. Yeah. Well, fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the basic concept of these for sure. You know, the running in place to sort of like charge up.
Yeah.
A different bonus is very fun. Very cool. I like it a lot.
Thank you, man.
How about your cyborg subclass?
Yes.
Episode 7.
Episode 7, we made subclasses based on the player character slowly transitioning into a cyborg. I just made some small changes here. I really liked how my subclass functioned. I think that it was very versatile, especially for fighter who is kind of already a versatile class. It just kind of leaned into that a little bit more. One thing that stuck out to me when we were going through this originally, you said that there were good features there at 3rd level, but it would be beneficial to have some ability to change them around at an ability score improvement or fighter level. So my first 3rd level feature is the integumentary system, and that just gives a free damage resistance and a free proficiency based on a list that I provided.
Right.
I added a stipulation that said whenever you gain a level in the fighter class, you can replace your chosen resistance and proficiency with a different one from these lists. Very
cool.
similar.
Great.
Very simple. And the only other thing that I added was a stipulation at the very bottom of the write-up. And I included it as an optional rule. I call this the flexible system engagement. Basically, it just says that the 10th, 7th, and 15th level features can happen in any order. So I put into writing what I had kind of put out as the idea before, but wasn't really included anywhere.
Yeah.
This is just a summation of that idea. Other than that, everything is the same.
I really like the choice piece of this. You know, the ability to grab the features in a different order. I think that's very fun. Would lead to, I think, a much wider and very interesting variety of player characters in this subclass. I don't know, in a way that just it feels like a fun skill tree sort of thing that I like a lot. Very cool.
Thanks.
My Warlock subclass I did a big overhaul on it.
Okay.
Previously, it wasn't even a little overpowered. It was crazy overpowered. I had not really done all of the thinking about, like, what does this actually mean for how many benefits this character has at 14th, 18th level? It's too many. That's the answer here. So a lot of it has stayed the same. So the Hive Mind, which is the Warlock patron here, which is sort of a Borg-esque concept, lets you choose from the Artificer spell list when you learn a Warlock spell. So you just have access to that spell list as well. And you gain proficiency with Tinker Tools and the Mending cantrip. You can cast the Mending cantrip on yourself to spend hit dice. But also, at first level, the biggest thing of this is the Augmented Self, and you roll on the random table to see which part of your body gets augmented. I changed the way this was laid out so it's not coming at the various feature levels. I have to write a whole nother write-up. I've just grouped them all into here's the part, and here's what you get at first level, the next upgrade, and the next upgrade. They're all clumped a little bit more clearly now. I've also removed the doubles. Okay. So if previously you were able to get, your one arm gets replaced and then your other arm gets replaced, I've removed that.
Yeah.
When you have something that there are two of that get replaced, it's just both of them. You get both of them replaced right away. And that saved me a lot of headache. And then I changed the levels that you get things at and the levels at which they upgrade. So I've separated them into separate steps so that you're not getting something at the same level that it upgrades.
That's good.
So your first augmentation comes at level 1. Your second augmentation comes at level 6, and your final augmentation comes at level 14. So you're only going to get the 3, which means that you're only going to get 3 of these things that can even possibly max out at 18th level.
Right.
And then the upgrade levels are 10th and 18th instead. So you have 2 base level augmentations at level 6. At 10, both of those gain in power. 14th level, you have 3 10th level bonus level things. It's still powerful, but I've messed with the powers a fair bit to hopefully tamp that down. So let me just go through them really quickly. Your arms are replaced by powerful magical prosthetics. They have unmatched strength and a crushing grip. So at first level, you can ignore two-handed property of any weapons you are holding and gain a +1 bonus to damage rolls with strength-based weapons. This bonus increases to +3 at level 10 and +4 at level 18. I think I meant to put that at +2 and +3. I will fix that. At 10th level, when attempting to grapple or restrain another creature, you roll with advantage. Creatures grappled by you have disadvantage on all escape attempts. And at 18th level, your augmented arms carry the weight of a hammer blow. Your melee weapon attacks deal double damage to objects, structures, and constructs. So still powerful, still useful. A little less all-encompassing, though. This is with the assumption that this is not your only bonus, but it's something that might help you play in a specific way, but isn't going to help you or fix everything at every situation, which they kind of were all built for before.
Yeah.
Then you have your brain. At first level, your brain being replaced by a machine that is collected to the larger collective gives you proficiency in either Arcana, History, or Religion, your choice, and resistance to psychic damage. You, at 10th level, gain advantage on intelligence saving throws, and your thoughts cannot be read by divination magic. And then at 18th level, you no longer need to sleep and can remain conscious during a long rest, as long as you refrain from strenuous activity. You also cannot become exhausted by non-magical means. Your eyes give you dark vision to a range of 120 feet and blind sight to a range of 15 feet. 10th level, you can't be surprised while you're conscious, and you add a +5 bonus to your passive perception score. And at 18th level, you can cast Detect Magic and find traps at will. Your legs have been replaced with spring-loaded prosthetics, and at first level, increase your walking speed by 10 feet and gives you a +2 bonus to strength saving throws to resist being moved against your will. This bonus increases to +3 at level 10 and +4 at level 18. At 10th level, you have advantage on dexterity saving throws. And at 18th level, you gain the ability to move up, down, and across vertical surfaces and upside down along ceilings while leaving your hands free, and your jump distance is permanently tripled.
I love that. That's such a good feature.
Just powerful legs.
Yeah.
Powerful legs, man. And then the torso has been amended to just at first level, you gain a +1 bonus to your AC. This bonus increases to +2 at level 10, +3 at level 18. And you count as one size larger when determining your carrying capacity and the weight you can push, drag, or lift. At 10th level, you gain resistance to all non-magical bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. And at 18th level, you replace that resistance with immunity to non-magical bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, and resistance to magical bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing.
That's great.
So by the end, if you take this class all the way to 20th level, you'll have 3 of these 18th level features, which is powerful, but it is also not, I think it would have been 5 of them before. I think I removed 2, so it would have been 5 major bonuses. on top of everything you get from the base class.
Right. And depending on which you chose, there were so many doubles available that you could really, like if you took both legs, both arms, you could be unstoppable almost.
Yeah.
If you took both of those and your torso, you're just
It's pretty crazy.
Warlock tank, yeah. This is a much better, more concise, more balanced version. It's good.
It's a little more well-balanced, hopefully, and yeah, definitely more concise. I also added a couple of these things down at the bottom just to pull them away from the complicated other parts of the write-up. So at 6th level is when the Bolstered Mind also comes in, when you get your second augmentation. You're also immune to the Charmed and Frightened conditions.
Totally fair.
And then I just added you also gain a new augmentation. It separates it out from the feature so that you're not trying to read both of those things and it gets confusing. At 10th level, you gain new features for your augmentations, Enhanced Body. And at 14th level, one with the collective, you become more machine than flesh. Your creature type becomes construct rather than humanoid, and you gain a new augmentation. That's it.
Love it.
It's cleaner. It probably still needs playtesting because it probably is still a little powerful, but I can't tell until I see somebody who's really good at playing Warlocks play it.
Yeah. This feels really good, though. I've played several Warlocks, and just at a glance, I would be interested in playing this just to see how it goes. There are clearly parts that, if you choose the right things, you could probably capitalize on that.
Yeah, definitely. Which is kind of why I would recommend randomizing it.
Yeah.
So that there's a little bit less ability to really exploit the system here with multi-classing and stuff like that. Like the idea, for me at least, would be to let the randomized table determine how the character functions. And not have a predisposed idea, but roll for what the augmentation is. Okay, that's going to change what kind of character this is now. That's going to change maybe what I'm willing to multi-class into.
Yep.
That's going to change the feats that I'm interested in taking if I'm getting just my brain and my eyes at first. Like, that's a very different character.
Right.
That would be my thought, although, if somebody else wants to play it a different way, go with God.
No, I like it. It's very good.
Speaking of God... Time for the deadly sins. Sorry, that was ham-fisted. Yeah.
Speaking of God, here is something else.
Here's the opposite of that in the mortal sins. Yeah, my 7 deadly sins feats, I think, are mostly the same. I changed a bunch of the wording, though.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Same.
So I made these 7 feats that dealt with primarily with D20 rolls, everything affected an ability check, attack roll, or saving throw in some way. And I mostly just changed the wording to clarify things. Things like the sin of desire is when you fail on an ability check, attack roll, or saving throw, you can choose to roll again with a penalty equal to your proficiency bonus. If you fail a second time, you gain disadvantage on all ability checks, attack rolls, and saving throws you make for 1 minute and cannot use this feature again until you complete a short or long rest. I think that was way more convoluted the first time around. It was like, you can try and roll again, but with a penalty of some kind that I think I just came up with arbitrarily. So it's a little clearer now. These are probably all still a little overcomplicated, but I also tried to lean into the idea that, like, these are things that you would not choose and that your DM will put on you.
Yep.
Your DM will give this to you in, like, a narratively interesting moment. And so I changed them all to be a little bit more on that side of narratively interesting and a little less balanced so that both sides were equal, and a little bit more to, like, this is actually kind of a dangerous thing.
Right.
If you play too close to the sun with it. But for the most part, they've stayed primarily the same.
Yeah, looking through them, it looks like they're all kind of...
Yeah, the sin of fury and the sin of idleness are basically the same as they were. The option to choose to make a roll with advantage or disadvantage, but if either one is a 1 or a 20 in the respective cases, you still fail or you still succeed. But I changed the wording instead of to critical success and critical failure. I changed the wording just to if either die rolls a 20, you can treat that number as a 20, or if either die rolls a 1, you must treat that roll as a 1. Which, by the way, this is a cool thing that I just think I want to utilize, not even just exclusively in the context of this feature, but just generally as a way to like just tweak the stakes of a roll here and there at the table. Is to say, cool, this check is, you're good at this check and something has happened in order to earn you all advantage on this check. However, the consequences are so bad that if either die is a 1, it still is a 1, right? So you get advantage.
Right.
And so if it's a 2 and a 19, you're fine. But if it's a 1 and a 19, that's a 1. It's only disadvantage if there's a 1, but it's advantage otherwise, which feels like, I don't know, kind of a fun way to like add just a little tweak to stakes in very specific circumstances. Or the alternate to say like, this is disadvantage, but like there's a glimmer of hope here. So if you roll a 20 on either of these, you can make it a 20. It can be a 20. That's just a fun thing. Maybe try it out in your games. See if you like it.
I think that style of decision making is very interesting.
Yeah.
It may or may not be good for your character's situation, but I think 100% of the time it makes it more interesting.
Yeah.
It puts value on the extremities of the situation, which is very cool. It's what I always try and strive to do as a game master.
Yeah, definitely. Anyway, what'd you do with your 7 deadly sins?
Mine also didn't change all that much. There are a few that are absolutely identical. My envy feature is the exact same. That's the one that your stealth is boosted if you're standing in front of things that are green. That's identical. You can still take that 3 times, and it just increases in effectiveness.
These were just so stupid and fun.
Yeah, let me take you back on a journey.
They were
to
just so silly.
7 deadly
all of
sins.
these.
Gluttony did have a good change. This, very similarly to yours, was overly complex. I had gluttony points as a thing in here, and you got a number of gluttony points equal to your proficiency bonus, and you could spend that. And that was stupid. What a dumb way for me to put that out. So this is much better now, much more concise, and I think more streamlined and balanced. It's just whenever a creature within your melee range is hit by a spell or weapon attack, you can use your reaction to take half of the damage. And after you take the damage in that way, your Constitution modifier is added to your AC until the start of your next turn. Great. So you eat some damage, but you get like a free shield spell, essentially, assuming that you're in a position to do this because you have high con.
Right.
But it increased the functionality, and you can use it more than your proficiency bonus amount of times.
Yeah.
So that one in much better shape now than it was.
I like it.
The next change that I made was to my greed feature. This is the feature that I wrote saying that you can use your wealth as a means to attack.
Yeah.
For this one, I just expanded the spectrum of treasure. So it goes gold piece, small gem, medium gem, and large gem. Gold pieces are still, 1 gold for a range of 50 feet for slashing damage, but I expanded the gems out into 3 sections instead of just small and large. Now small gems are considered to be 1 to 200 gold pieces instead of 3. Medium gems would be 201 gold pieces to 400, and large gems would be 401 plus. So there's a larger disparity, but the large gems do a bit more damage. I also took the dexterity modifier out of this, so any class can kind of use this on a more balanced playing field.
Yeah. It's still such a stupid idea to just throw your 400 gold piece diamond for a single instance of 5d6 damage. But hey,
man, if you don't have any other options, at least you have something to fall back on.
I mean, here's the thing.
To fall back on.
It will do more damage than just throwing a diamond at something in Baldur's Gate 3. I
Correct.
know this from experience. You can just throw something at somebody. It does as much as a rock does.
So
dumb.
I had this as I was going back and redoing these, I had this vision of just a bunch of characters with this feat in like a dragon's horde. So you're just surrounded by treasure and it's everywhere and you're running low on resources. So everybody just reverts to picking up whatever is closest to them and throwing it at the dragon, just like slaying a dragon
So
with its
good.
own treasure. How
So good.
poetic justice.
Can you
But outside
can you
of that-
imagine your tax collector with this feat too?
That'd be perfect.
I mean, it's perfect. It's great.
A match made in heaven.
Amazing.
I'll have to make that a thing someday.
I mean, you basically just, if you do that, you just make. He's a guy who his literal only weapon is money. That's all. It's
Perfect.
And
Tax
that's great.
everybody for all their
love it.
worth and then use your taxed income as your weapon.
Yeah.
Perfect. Moving down my list, I also streamlined my lust feat. There were just unnecessary steps in here that were all kind of narrative, and I think I pigeonholed what was able to be done with this feat a little bit too much. Before I had strict options that you could choose between. Mm-hmm. To recap, this feat makes it so another creature somewhere in the world develops a strange infatuation with your player character, and they just hunt you down for whatever reason. I say that it probably should not be a malicious reason. They're just trying to find you. Maybe you owe them money or whatever. But I had some options there that you could choose from, and I just eliminated them and kind of wrote them into the write-up as possibilities instead of hard and fast rules you need to follow.
Yeah.
And that's all. So it's kind of the same, but it's more open to player interpretation.
I like
Again,
that.
It is so dumb, and nobody that is optimizing a character would ever or should ever take this. If you see fit as a DM to give somebody a small side annoyance, this is the thing to do.
Why not?
To have just a creature somewhere on the other side of the world wake up one day and say, I gotta find that guy. I will stop at nothing to find this character and give him a piece of my mind. Pride, totally the same. I did not change pride at all. That was the one where you have to be a lion and
Simba.
you realize that you're actually a king of a far off land, increasing your charisma and such. Sloth, I didn't really change at all. I think I maybe modified. I modified some stats a little bit by 1 or 2 points here.
Oh, sure.
Nothing crazy. And Wrath, I think, is totally identical as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like it.
So Lust, Greed, and Gluttony got the big changes this time around.
I like these so much still. Obviously none of them are necessarily the first choice picks for anybody, I don't think.
No.
Barring like
Nor should they
maybe
be.
Gluttony. I mean, Gluttony
Now
I can
Gluttony,
see actually being
yeah.
like really legitimately useful. And Wrath too. Wrath has some good vibes.
Wrath is
for
good.
sure.
Wrath is good.
I can see it.
You don't think a sloth hug is useful?
It's fun, certainly. I can see it working very well for the right character. But I like Wrath, especially if you're like more melee focused cleric type.
Certainly.
I think that could be a really, really fun thing to take on. But all told, these are still very fun and still delightful to me. In the right context, they could add some great whimsy to a game. How about your goading items?
When we first did this was episode 9. Mm-hmm. This was the week where we had to take a week off because I was sick. I had COVID during this creation. And I totally misunderstood the actual prompt. These were supposed to be features. I made 4 items.
You did.
And looking back on this, I've thought all week about this, that I wanted to actually make a feature. And the more I thought about it, the more I looked at the things that I made. I just like the format that I have so much. I didn't want to take any of them away and replace them with a feature. So I didn't change these at all. I didn't change the wording of them. I didn't add any new features. So I'm fine with these staying the same.
That's fair. That's fair. I will say, I do think it's worth considering putting in a caveat onto the Gong Shield, my favorite of the items, about what happens when you block damage with the shield. I don't know what it means. I don't know how you write it in there, but I feel like it should do something. But I accept it as it is. It's a good item.
I think it could be interpreted if you have the right DM that would allow this as a thing. A weapon or something hitting the shield would count as the shield being struck by, because my actual verbiage is being struck by the pommel of a weapon or some other hard object. I feel like that would count.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't say as a bonus action you have to strike it. It just says this shield can be struck by a weapon or some other hard object. I suppose that it would still trigger that. Though I did not write that explicitly. I didn't change it at all.
You'll be not surprised to find that I didn't really change mine either at all. I changed a tiny bit of wording that just wasn't clear about one of them. I made 2 feats, the Provocateur and Hostility feat. Provocateur allows you to use one of your attacks on your turn to attempt to bait a creature into attacking you. And you have to make an intimidation check contested by its wisdom. And if you succeed, it must use its next turn to attack you. The only thing I changed is it said if the creature misses you with that attack, you can use your reaction to make a single weapon attack against that creature. I think that was unclear because that attack is not a super precise way to say it. So I said if the creature misses you with an attack on its next turn, you can use your reaction to make a single weapon attack against that creature.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I changed. The other one is identical, hostility. When a creature misses you with a weapon or spell attack, you can use your reaction to give that creature 1 point of hostility. Every point of hostility a creature has gives it a -1 penalty on attack rolls against creatures other than you. And then when it eventually hits you, it deals those hostility points as damage. That's it.
I really like these. I liked them before. I know that you weren't sold on them before.
I've really come around on them.
I like them both. We talked about this a little bit before, but especially for a swashbuckler rogue. I love the Provocateur especially. These are just very good. I don't have them built into D&D Beyond yet, but I fully intend on making these available for my players in my games because I think they're just really solid, balanced features. I like them a lot.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've really come around on them. I think at the time I was thinking, they're not enough. They don't do enough. They feel thin. But I've really come around on the idea that it's like, well, they're feats. Feats. Yeah. None of the feats, when taken, out of all context, read like full, complete features that you could build a whole character around. You're not supposed to.
Right.
They're
just add-ons.
They are things you can add on. Yeah, they're nice little attachments, and they're not supposed to be requirements because you might not take them. They can supplement a certain play style, like you said, with a swashbuckler or with a barbarian or a paladin. These things can be really, really great and go along with it really nicely.
Yeah.
But I like the simplicity of them. I've come around on it a fair bit.
Talk to me about your
Rancor. And then
Rancor.
we have the 10th episode. Yeah, the Rancor-inspired monster holding a door. Faithful listeners will recall that I made a creature subtype called the Kefaundo, who are inspired by the lore of Rancors within the world of Star Wars. These beasts that have been tamed, or I guess quote-unquote tamed. Really, they are, somewhat intelligent in their own right and have a culture all their own, but have been forced to be seen as little more than mindless killing machines. But I've expanded that lore to say that they're actually quite clever. They can utilize the things around them to supplement some of their, evolutionary shortcomings. So I made the Kfoundo Shield Beast, which used a large door as a shield. I have not changed that at all, but have instead just added 2 more options to the Kfoundo group, including the Kfoundo Chain Beast, which attacks with a large chain, can grapple and restrain you as one of its attacks with the chain, and then can also sweep the chain around itself, causing all creatures within 15 feet to make a dexterity saving throw or take some damage and fall prone. Before the start of the creature's next turn, anybody that ends its turn within 15 feet must make that same saving throw again, and basically just swinging this thing around wildly.
Love that.
And then I also added the Kfoundo Shock Beast, somewhat inspired by yours. It is some sort of creature that has, I don't know, maybe it's found some wires that still have some electrical charge running through it and can utilize these as a sort of weapon. So it can statically charge creatures when it hits them with its claws. And then it can deal a shockwave, sending a high voltage burst to all statically charged creatures within 30 feet. And each affected creature must make a con save or take some lightning damage and become stunned. And also has a charged body feature, deals some lightning damage when you get too close to it and hit it with a melee weapon or spell attack. So, just a couple other options for how a creature like this could function. The idea being that, like, you're relying less heavily on the creature's innate abilities, armor, weapons, whatever, and instead adding on how might they creatively use some sort of salvaged item. So there you go.
I like those a lot.
2 more options.
Yeah.
With plenty more that could be added onto it.
Yeah, it's a really good expansion. I'm looking forward to the 2025 drop of the Kfoundo book that you'll be writing.
Yep.
Full of stat blocks.
Of course. How about yours? How did the Spectre of Hut Castle move out for you?
I actually did the exact same thing that you did.
Nice.
Strangely enough. I kept my Spectre stat block relatively the same. I took away some of its features to make it a little bit more vulnerable by itself, just to make it a little bit more desirable as a possessive creature rather than a fighter on its own.
Yeah, sure.
I kept the actual Rancor, the Impaled Rancor, relatively the same. I don't think I changed anything within that stat block, but I did create 2 other blocks based on creatures from the Star Wars universe. So I leaned more heavily into the lore, which I did not do necessarily the first time. So I added an Impaled Porg, which is like the small hamster type of creature.
Yeah. That's sad.
Well, the idea is like an army of these just like zombified, 0 hit point, invincible creatures that the Spectre can kind of just all rise at once. Because I did like the idea that you brought up that this can be more of an encounter and less of a monster stat block to just drop in. Like this is a fully functioning area. Like this is a situation, right? More than it's just a stat block. So I'm envisioning a bunch of Star Wars creatures just like rising from the dead and going to attack a party or something. But the chances of all of those creatures being huge, but all being Rancors, is pretty slim. Yeah. So we have the Impaled Porg, which can nibble as an attack for some lightning damage, and nuzzle as an attack to recharge in a 5 or 6, which paralyzes another creature if they get close enough to nuzzle you. They also have the Cuteness Corpse feature, which it does not register as undead to creatures with an intelligence score of 8 or less. So it can kind of go fly under the radar if it is within a sea of undead or other sub-intelligent beings.
Sure.
I also made an Impaled Tauntaun, which is like the Strider. A lot of characters use these as mounts. Yep. So that's exactly what I did. It has the Death Strider feature, which allows it to be used as a mount without requiring any skill check to tame it, as long as the Spectre is friendly towards you. So if you find a way to flip the situation and you are on good terms with the Spectre, you can get a whole fleet full of mounts that don't require animal handling checks.
Interesting.
And then it just has a basic ram and a kick attack as a multi-attack for one of those apiece. So not huge expansions to the idea itself, but just a little bit of versatility in encounter building for DMs that want to use this.
Yeah.
And some flexibility if you want to try getting through these encounters more persuasively than physically.
I think these creatures are just so like the creature with 0 hit points is just so fascinating to me, right? Like as an exercise in like, this is the opposite of a bag of hit points, right? Like we run into that issue occasionally from time to time as DMs of like, how do we make this combat interesting and not just feel like this creature is just a big old hit point counter that just needs to be taken down and it's not doing all that much that's interesting. This is sort of the opposite of that, where it's like, there are no hit points here. There's no way to take this down beyond finding a creative way around it.
Yeah.
Maybe you can stun it. Maybe you can get it to, go in a different direction, follow something else while you escape, but you can't actually stop it.
Right.
You can't actually take it down to 0 hit points because it's at 0 hit points already.
Yeah.
And I just think that's such an interesting and creative way to approach encounter design that isn't, it isn't the same as saying like, there's one solution to this thing and I've decided what it is and so my players can't be creative. It's saying this solution is not possible.
Right.
And so you're limiting a single option, but I don't think it's forcing any other specific option, right? Like figuring out how to get around it is going to be one of the most fun things you have at your table because they're going to propose something that like, yes, I guess that would work, wouldn't it? I didn't think of that.
Those are the best times too, right? Where you're running an encounter and you have some limitations, but it's relatively open to whatever your players are trying to do or whatever they come up with. And I don't know how you go about preparing those encounters, but I always have, like 3 or 4 possibilities that might be on the table that I don't know exactly how they would iron out, but they would probably work. And it's got to be close to 50% of the time that a player comes up with something that I did not think about that meets the brief and will allow them to progress. And that's just so cool. I love it. So cool to watch that in real time.
Every time. It's great. And that's it.
That's it.
All the first 10 of our creations reworked, rethought, and made better, I would say, across the board.
I agree. And only a couple of them that we didn't really touch, which is great.
Yeah. We made quite a few changes because there's always something you can tweak. There's always something you can iron out. Right. But I like all of these so much. I like all 10 or I guess 20 plus of these things now quite a lot. For all of you listening, you can check these out as well. Put the old version alongside the new version, see what all changed in a more specific way. Head on over to our Patreon. That's patreon.com/College of Creation Pod to check these out and get in on the full compendium, which we're going to put together here very shortly. Now that we have everything edited.
Yep.
Do a last pass, put it all together, make it look all fancy and nice. And then it's back on to business as usual, I suppose, from there, eh?
I suppose. We'll have a couple extra voices on the podcast next week, but we'll still be...
Indeed,
we'll still
will.
be doing the same stuff, making new homebrew, just with a couple guests, which is very exciting.
We are very excited to next week be welcoming our first guests onto the podcast. You have it correct. We're going to have a couple people come in and build their own options for the homebrew prompt that we roll for today. And those people, we are excited to say, are going to be friends of ours, friends of the pod, Justin and Taylor from So You Want to Be a DM, another incredible podcast with lots of great tips and tricks around D&D, homebrew, running the game, playing the game.
And they have great actual plays out right now for your consumption.
Yeah.
It's all under the same podcast umbrella.
Same feed.
Great DMs, great players, really awesome storylines. I have been myself listening to Sphinx City lately over these last couple days. Really great listen. Highly recommend it. Justin and Taylor will be with us next week.
Indeed. I've had the pleasure of playing not D&D, but a different TTRPG with Justin as a player, and they're an incredibly creative player for sure. It was an absolute delight, and I can't wait to see what both of them come up with for our prompt. Shall we roll for it, Michael?
I think so. It's been a couple weeks since we've rolled anything, so I don't know whose turn
know, right?
it is.
Let's.
Why don't you go ahead? You can roll for our prompt next week.
I will roll, and we'll see what we end up with here. All right, that is going to be a 16, Michael.
A 16 today, Dan. We are going to be making with Justin and Taylor next week a series of magical food items.
Wondrous food items. That's so interesting and very creative. And I'm going to have to watch, I think, some Delicious in Dungeon to get myself some ideas here.
Okay, yeah, wondrous food items. Man, that could go in so many different ways. That's what a good prompt. What a good prompt.
Well, Michael, do you have anything to say to the people before we say goodbye?
Dan, you know, I always have something to say to the people before we go. And today's is very brief. We talked a lot today about updating things. Dan even said it at one point that there's always something that can be updated, always something that can be changed. And I'm here to tell you that is true, but that should not stop you from putting things that you create into your games. It shouldn't stop you from testing them. It shouldn't stop you from sharing them with safe collaborators, positive collaborators. Yes, we always want to keep updating and improving the things that we make, but perfection is an impossible standard. Mm-hmm. If you strive for perfection, you're never, ever going to put anything out. I don't think anything that we have made on this series so far in 20 episodes is perfect. And that's just as it should be.
Yeah.
So don't let that stop you. Please put your things out. Please share. Please share with us if you want to. If you have no one else to share your creations with, you can always email us and share them with us. We'd love to review them or talk to you about them. Creativity can be whatever you want it to be.
Absolutely. Until next time.
Until next time.
We'll talk to you all later. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Hey everyone, Michael here. Thanks for listening to this episode of the College of Creation. If you want to see our creations from this episode and all of our past episodes, you can find those for free on our Patreon page. That's patreon.com/College of Creation Pod. If you feel like supporting us further, you can become a patron and access a few bonus recordings, like top 10 lists, D&D related games, and conversations that were cut from full episodes for time. If you have any questions or a homebrew prompt you'd like to see Dan and I tackle on the show, you can send those to collegeofcreationpod@gmail.com. And our intro and outro music is by Fuserwolf. You can check out his content on Bandcamp and Spotify. Again, thank you all so much for listening.